Hello everybody. I'd like to start this video by saying I hope you had a lovely morning, have a lovely day, and hopefully have a lovely night. Right? Just wanted to say some good stuff. What I wanted to talk about today was artificial intelligence and specifically artificial partners, aka AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends. Right? Everybody's already said their opinion on this. The reason why I want to talk about this is because, well, I actually thought to myself, like as a hypothetical situation, if there were like this was hypothetical. If there were to be a second pandemic, would it be more catastrophic than the first pandemic that happened in 2020 or 2019, or more, less or more catastrophic? And if so, why? And I think I immediately started thinking to myself, okay, because one of the main concerns I had when thinking about this hypothetical was inherently AI partners and AI girlfriends. Because something I noticed that happened with 2020, I think everybody noticed this, that loneliness drastically increased. The rate of at which people become lonely massively increased with people. Right? So I immediately thought to myself, okay then. Okay. What is something new that came along in the future to kind of take advantage of this loneliness that was affecting many people in many countries? AI girlfriends, AI partners. So I think I thought to myself for a moment, what would AI girlfriends absolutely pop off if a second pandemic were to hit? I mean, I've seen professionals say that it will happen, it won't, but I don't remember who those guys are. People say that, but I don't remember actually any professionals saying that, so I can't quote anybody. But if it does, or when it does, how catastrophic could it possibly be, and what would be the first people to be affected by it? I actually thought to myself for a moment that I think it would be okay. I want to preface this right now. Please, number one, educate yourself and do your own research into this, because this is just a theory of mine, right? I've primarily been watching Americans for most of my life, right? I don't study other people other than Americans, right? So of course my theories specifically only connected to Americans inherently, right? And I think that realistically, young men in America are probably going to be the most fucked because of this. Because I've seen so many people talk about how most of the people that are inherently lonely seem to be young Americans, especially young men in America, right? So I do genuinely believe in my vast intelligence that if a second pandemic were to hit in America, young men would absolutely, like, number one, AI girlfriends would pop off. I think just everywhere in general, because there's still very lonely people everywhere across the world because COVID affected, I think, like everybody, right? I think for the most part, it started in China, I think it kind of went everywhere. So it affected everybody to an extent. Maybe not Africans, actually. I don't know. I don't know about that. But realistically, I do think AI girlfriends would be very catastrophic because of this, because of inherent loneliness, right? I think also one of the main reasons why I actually find young men in America to be the biggest victims, like the biggest potential victims of AI girlfriends combined with the second pandemic, would be inherently the idea of the male loneliness epidemic. I don't know or nor care if you think that's true or not, but I've seen this thing happening, like just videos about people talking about this thing called the male loneliness epidemic, talking about how young men in America are quitting and becoming practically hikikomoris or incels, right? Involuntarily celibate. Men becoming withdrawing from society and just, okay, that's kind of a bit different thing. I mean, I think they're a bit connected, but not entirely the same thing. But in fact, practically just like men realizing that they're not close with anybody. Some of them withdraw from society. I think that's what a thing that's been happening in mass droves that is inherently connected to the male loneliness epidemic. That men are kind of withdrawing from society and the world, especially young men in America, and how they inherently become kind of incapable or become kind of stunted when it comes to social interaction with other human beings, right? And I was actually very interested by that. I was actually very curious. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. What could this lead to? Which is actually how I kind of came up with the hypothetical. One of the reasons why I came up with the hypothetical. Yes, I paused the video to collect my thoughts, and I think it's because I want to talk about this way, the topic of AI girlfriends. I think one of the main reasons that why AI girlfriends will become very popular and very big is the fact that the way I think people in the West inherently deal with most problems is inherently in a very flawed manner. For example, one of the things we will do, I theorize, I hypothesize that the way people will deal with AI partners in the future will inherently be through, for example, slandering, defaming, and shaming people that end up resorting to AI, getting AI partners. They'll laugh and shame them, but they won't really look at the inherent flaws and the inherent problems that create them, that create people that feel so desperate for a relationship that they will resort to artificial partners, right? Because I feel like at the end of the day, this is a very common thing that I've noticed with most people, is that when there's a big problem that inherently has a lot of things that create it, people inherently ignore all of the reasons that could create a person that will be very susceptible to something, instead of, yeah, they inherently ignore all of the things that could possibly make someone very susceptible to something, for example, AI partners, and just shame them for resorting to AI partners instead of actually looking at the exact problem. For example, if I pose you a hypothetical, let's just say hypothetically, right? If, let's just say metaphorically, if there were to be a Sigma male influencer who has a large audience of people, a large audience of young men, right? How do you think most people would discuss this male influencer? How do you think many people, like, if there was a massive male content creator who had a history, who had a lot of power, who has a large fan base of boys who will constantly flock to them and constantly glaze them and support them and do everything they say, how do you think, who was inherently controversial for one reason or another, right, in this metaphor, how do you think most people would react to them? For example, people on the news or other YouTubers, how do you think they would react to them, to this male influencer? The way I think they'll react to them is by shaming them. If this is controversial male influencer who's really big, I assume people would first shame and attack and defame this person, and shame the fans for resorting to becoming this person's fan, instead of actually sitting down and talking about why they would resort to male influencers. They would say, oh, they'd resort to it because they're pathetic, because they're losers, because they're cowards. But they wouldn't talk about societal structures that make them super desperate for so desperate for some kind of masculine role model, right? They wouldn't talk about how society possibly could have failed men to such an extent, to the point where they feel the need to resort to looking for some cool male influencer, Sigma male, to inherently leech onto, right? And I feel that's going to be the same exact thing that happens with AI partners, is that, like, people will make fun and bully them. They'll say, oh, they're pathetic, they're losers, they're incels, they're retarded. But they won't talk about the societal structures that inherently stunt these people to such an extent that they feel like they have to go to an artificial intelligence for I guess I was supposed to say compassion, but realistically it's the illusion of compassion, for the illusion of compassion, for the illusion of love, for the illusion of companionship. And I think it's inherently because we all know that realistically we can't really do anything about it at the end of the day. I mean, what do you think you could really do? Like, when you sit down and think about why some people would resort to, like, AI girlfriends and stuff, you'd be like, oh, hell, these guys are retarded. But when you really sit down and think about it, it's like you really can't really do much about it. Because, well, societal structures are massive, long things that will end up being they're very hard to take care of. And I actually do think, I'm sorry, this is kind of a bit of a side tangent, but, like, I actually do think AI girlfriends the majority of people that look for utilize AI partners, the growth of AI partner acceptance will kind of be like the LGBTQ. You know how the LGBTQ was at first very small, but it was still very bullied. But it's kept growing and growing and growing. I feel like it'll be the same thing with AI partner acceptance, except significantly faster, because companies can make way, way more money. And I feel like many people may say something like, that's stupid as hell. Since when did the ability of companies to make profit ever affect people accepting certain changes? And I think it's like, you don't realize how much power companies have. I mean, realistically, they can get that shit everywhere. I mean, they're already utilizing AI art and all that kind of crap everywhere. But actually, okay, yeah, maybe I'm kind of full of my shit. Maybe I'm kind of talking shit, yapping shit on my ass. But I still think the AI growth is going to be very big because people don't really know how to talk about it. Because inherently, societally, people have kind of, this is my opinion, very retarded opinion, but it's still my opinion. I think society is inherently just like failed men, especially young men, which is why they're so desperate for an AI partner. And I know I'm ranting like a dumbass, so I'm going to end this topic here. You know what? Love yourself. I hope you drink some water. I hope if you hate yourself, you can learn to appreciate that you're also a human being. Every human being makes mistakes in life. For example, me with this video. So I hope you all love yourselves and appreciate yourselves and take a fresh breath of air with a smile. You know, I hope you should take a bit of that oxygen from the atmosphere, from the ozone layer, and breathe it into your lungs with a smile on your face, knowing that you matter, knowing that the world isn't better without you. Okay, you matter, and I hope you know that and love yourself and love others and spread that little bit of positivity within your soul with other people around you, so that you can thrive in this blue chalk bubble. Why? So what are you here for? Okay, definitely aren't here to support. What are you here for? Support me. Love yourself. Love yourself. Now, I've never seen someone so valuable in my entire life. I'm totally serious. I'm in this with 100%. I'm in this with 1,000%. Love yourself. I'm in this with 100%. I'm in this with 1,000%. Love yourself. That's all.